What do you guys think? Lights on or off in the arcade? What's going on, everybody? It's your boy GemMint, and we asked our Facebook group Geminites what the most underrated omnibus was. This is going to be a really good video because this is going to be a chance for us to pick up on some gems, man. Some stuff that we may not have even known about or heard about, but never thought twice about it. So it's not a video of what books to stay away from, right? Because we did the most overrated. We did what's the best, what's the worst. So I'm kind of excited for this one. All right, Matt, what do you got for me? So he's saying Injustice is pretty underrated. People see it as a stereotypical video game-based comic and don't give it a chance. It's one of the best and most heartbreaking stories I've read. DC needs to stop playing around and make the Injustice 2 omnibus. If anybody thinks Injustice is just some random video game book, man, that's crazy. I always knew what it was for what it was. Had huge faith in NetherRealm. I loved how they crafted that story because you got to remember, then they came out with Mortal Kombat 9. They've been pioneers of fighting game story modes. So when they decided to adapt a DC comic, I knew it was going to be epic and worked closely with DC. The fact that they printed Omnis, they were actually releasing these as like webisodes, I think it was even, where it was like half the comic at a time. Anyway, Injustice is definitely worth the read. Justice says, two huge standouts this year for me were Manipal's Flash and Azzarello's Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman was a much-needed reimagining of her world, and Flash was probably the most beginner-friendly omnibus I've ever read while being incredibly fun. Yeah, I haven't read either one of those, and the Manipal Flash, like I've flipped through it, has great artwork. It feels like it's art-driven, so that makes sense. So good to know that that's a good beginner book. And then Azzarello's Wonder Woman, I've heard great things about it. They made absolutes and omnis for it, so it's got to be a good run. But I haven't read it. All right, let's see what's Doug say. Swamp Thing by Nancy Collins. I see a lot of people pass over it these days. In my opinion, it's better than the Alan Moore run. I know. I only know from one of the other videos that they were saying that they didn't like the Nancy Collins or how that has an omnibus before other stuff or something to that effect. Ed Loot, I don't know why people overlook this. I don't think it's better than Moore's run, but it's my second favorite Swamp Thing run. So Ed Loot backing up that Nancy Collins. She typically isn't a comic book writer. Yo, shout out to Nancy Collins. She actually shared my video when I got this book in as part of a haul, I think it was. If I recall, it was like the first big haul after the pandemic where everything like stopped for 3 months and they weren't pressing anything or whatever. So shout out to Nancy Collins. Lai Townsley says JSA Omnis volumes 1 through 3. Damn. Joshua coming back saying it's the best team-wide character development in a series I've read, especially when it comes to team dynamics. Only book that comes close is probably the new Warriors Omnibus, the OG, right? Dustin Gregg says, no way this is underrated. I just think a lot of newcomers haven't gotten to it yet. I haven't read that. It was always so intimidating. But I've read, a chunk of 3-volume Omnis, Jeff Johns' Green Lantern, Nightfall. I'm sure there's a ton others, but the JSA one, I don't know, I guess it just didn't interest me enough. I don't see a lot of people talk about them. Starman deserves a proper omnibus. Wonder Woman Diana Prince omnibus is such a fun book, not the best Wonder Woman run. Perez is a tough beat, but worth checking out. That one just never interested me either. The Invaders Omni, so that's going Silver Age, right? Favorite books this year, only read a few issues here and there before going into the Omni. And then Alpha Flight by John Byrne. Not his best work, but he did some great stuff on this book. Man, when I think Alpha Flight, I just always think trying to retcon the Wolverine origin. I guess I never gave them their just due and just try to read some Alpha Flight stuff. Kenneth J. Franklin almost said Wonder Woman 2, but haven't read enough. Just there for the groovy art. Yeah, that's that like Austin Powers, Diana Prince Omni. Ed heard it wasn't very good, but enjoyed it. Yeah, see, sometimes you got to give it a shot for yourself, right? Hans Peter, I finally received an undamaged copy of that Omni. Returned it at least twice. You sound like my guy, deluxe edition. Not a fan of how DC keeps retelling Wonder Woman's origin. I think they need to move on from that. Silver Surfer, Silver Age. Ant Spav says this was his second pick. I don't know that that's underrated. I always looked at that like, first of all, when I got into the game, it was a whale. Sought after omnibus, and I always dug that artwork. It has iconic covers. Silver Surfer issue 4, issue 1. You got the Mephisto in issue 3. It only goes up to like 14 or 15 issues. I read it and I thought it delivered the dramatic Stan Lee storytelling of Norrin Rad. The Empire Omnibus by Marvel, I know they structure their events weird, but I really enjoyed this Omni. I read it in single issues as I was reading a lot at the time. I liked the setup to it. Wasn't it like a Dan Slott, Fantastic Four, Avengers thing? The setups were good, but I don't think it paid off. Superman Exile and Other Stories. By the title, I feel like it may get pushed aside, but it's some essential reading if you're reading John Byrne's Man of Steel run. Yeah, so that's one that I would agree with, and I think you're right. I think I said that in my review. That title is a turnoff. The Exiled and Other Stories. It's like, it wasn't even good enough to have a name. It should have just called it Superman The Exiled. or The Exile or whatever. I don't know. The other story throws it off. I read it. I reviewed it. I loved it, man, because I'm a big fan of Death and Return of Superman and the Reign of the Supermen. So this was a prequel to that. And I haven't read the John Byrne stuff. I know they were supposed to have an omnibus for it, but then it came out as an oversized hardcover or something like that. I just never picked it up. Exile is one of those omnis I wish I could read again for the first time. 2 people agree. That's when I read it for the first time. So I feel still like I'm recently off of that. Hold on, let me like this, man. Yeah, and you definitely don't hear people recommending it. So I think that's a true, good, underrated omnibus pick right there. This video is brought to you by Ninja Funk. Ninja Funk is already celebrating their 1-year anniversary, and they're having a huge event at the Ninja Exchange in Carlsbad, California. Not only will there be a live signing with co-creators JPG and Steve Shuett, but they're bringing out legendary artists Jim Lee and David Mack. But that's not all. We have special guest John Dolmayan, the creator of Essentia, founder of Torpedo Comics, and happened to play drums in a little band called System of a Down. If you're in the area, make sure to come swing by on November 18th and 19th for the celebration. Oh, a lot of people championing that run. Yeah, that's funny because we always talk about Roger Stern Spider-Man, but he was in that Omni as well, right? That was a great story, man. Miracle Man Omnibus, wow. And I hear people say both. I've heard someone recommend it to me like, Jem, you really need to read that. And then I've heard people say that it was whack. They couldn't get into it. Most underrated for Marvel, Superior Foes of Spider-Man. If you don't want a serious story, I guess, like it's not a serious Spider-Man story. I read it. I get why people like it. I just don't like it. Earth X Trilogy Alpha. I still haven't gotten into this, man. Awesome art. Even if it isn't Alex Ross, right? Because he only did the covers. So sometimes you assume he did the whole run. But it's just regular, like your typical artwork on the inside. Yeah, so I guess that's what I always looked at it like. Isn't it like the Kingdom Come for Marvel? Wonder Woman by Azzarello for DC. So another take on that. Honorable mention, underrated story but not an omnibus, is Aquaman Atlantis Chronicles by Peter David. Yo, Peter David wrote his ass off still. Continues to. Another champion on Atlantis Chronicles. Superior Foes was great, very underrated. Deathstroke by Priest. That one came up in a recent video too. The Rise and Fall of Batman. Isn't that, is it Chip Zdarsky? I feel like the Rise and Fall of the Batman was like, oh, James Tynion. And it was like, that was before he, that's who it was, I think. And it was before he was on that run. Well, now I want to check. Yeah, because it was like such a big deal when he came to the Batman book, but I was like, yo, he already wrote Batman shit. All right, anyway, he's saying it's a really great Bat Family book, tells a solid story in each arc with pretty good art throughout. So that might be a good one to check out right now because it sounds like that's what James Gunn wants to do with his version of the DC universe and focus on the Bat Family. So maybe I should check that one out. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. I always want to say James Tynion. Is it Tynion? Tiny Onion? The Flash by Jeff Johns. I couldn't get into it, bro. Damn. I wanted to get into that one too. Like I gave up like halfway through the first Omni. Great run, continues off Wade's The Flash and takes it into a great direction. The art by Collins is phenomenal. I don't think it's the most underrated, but not enough people have read it. Savage Avengers. This was not what I thought it was going to be. This book sold as a teen book rather than a Conan Doctor Strange book. All your favorite gritty characters make an appearance. Really fun, and it's super quick. Savage Avengers does look like fun. I read some Savage Avengers digitally, I think, but I don't know if that was all that was collected in that omnibus. But was that the one where you had like Agent Venom was on there? Well, Conan. Yeah, I must have read some of that. The Omni looked good too. I flipped through it. Terrell Young, Iron Man by Kurt and Chen. Amazing art and storytelling. No one ever talks about it. I think that's because it's Iron Man. Bro didn't get popular until the movies. Damn. I kind of thought I heard somebody say that was like one of the worst Omnis in a recent video. I could be wrong though. I haven't checked it out. Ant says Solomon Kane, great read from end to end, never gets mentioned. That's just not really my genre, you know? Orion by Walt Simonson pairs so well with John Byrne's Fourth World, which is another overlooked gem of an Omni. Those are always like really intimidating ones for me, man, but I do want to read it. I have Orion, but I don't think I have the Jack Kirby Fourth World. I think I sold it, man. Bugging out. Fear Agent and Luna Bros Sword. So those are absolutes, right? In like library editions. Fear Agent was super dope. I read it, did a review. I think that was like pandemic era actually too. Darth Vader. Hey, what's up, Josh? Yeah, I definitely, I'd love that omnibus. Darth Vader was dope. Fills in the gaps between movies, explores his mental state. Yeah, how he took the loss, you know, after the events of the first movie, how he looked in front of the Emperor. It was dope. Cosmic Ghost Rider and Fantastic Four by Miller and Hitch. Cosmic Ghost Rider was fun. I don't know that it's underrated. I think most people would not like it because it's so slapsticky. It's very Deadpool vibes, right? I love Cosmic Ghost Rider though. Punisher Back to the War Omnibus, definitely an underrated one. So I started reading that and I kind of gave up on it. I was reading it going to San Diego Comic-Con and I think I read the first appearance and some of the Spider-Man stories, but I didn't get to like the Punisher I guess there's some black and white magazine stuff, then some miniseries. Ken is saying the Batman black and white omnibus because no one else will say it. Some of it can be but it's mostly good with a spot of brilliance. Maybe more for art lovers / creatives, but it's the second must-own Batman Omni behind Loeb and Sale because of its variety and how a Batman story can be told with brilliant art. Very underrated. And then they got the figures that go with it too. Come on now. I think Very Gary collects those. Chris says, I really enjoyed Animal Man by Jeff Lemire. In my opinion, the better Animal Man Omni. It's not one that people say is bad, but I just don't hear it talked about much. I just got the Swamp Thing New 52 Omnibus, so looking forward to reading that part of the story. Yeah, I did that same read-through around the time when I read Superman the Exiled. So definitely, I definitely enjoyed it. I actually burned through those Omnis, to be honest. We got Fantastic Four by Wade and Waringo. I did read and review that one. I enjoyed it. I don't remember wanting to champion it. I liked Hickman's run better. So for underrated, it's a good Omni to read. I guess in that sense, I think maybe if people overlook it, they should give it a shot. One of the first Omnis that you've bought but felt like it doesn't get talked about as much as the Hickman or Silver Age stuff or the John Byrne stuff. It's just got big shoes to fill, right? And it just kind of does its thing. It's not whack, but I don't remember it standing out as much, if I got to be honest. Dark Horse Star Wars Legacy Omnibus Volumes 1 through 3, maybe the best Dark Horse Star Wars ever made. Good take. Star Wars, I ended up selling the Star Wars stuff, man. And I did like the Darth Vader Omnibus, the Jason Aaron Omni, but there was so much material, and I was just like, at the time, it's too much to get into. Maybe I'll start revisiting. Patrick says, an omnibus nobody really talks about, though I don't know if they're underrated or not, is the JLI Omnis 1 and 2. The dialogue, although very dated, had me laughing a lot. The character beats from Batman to, what's that, Metamorpho, MMBG. Damn, BG just got home. Yeah, rest in peace, Keith Giffen as well, man. Ed Lute says, I love this era of Justice League. It's where I started buying it regularly. So many funny but great character-driven stories. Damn, okay. Nathan Walters says, Marvel Cosmic Universe by Donny Cates. Normally, I'm not a fan of anthology omnis, but most Cates stuff at Marvel has been connected in some way. 4 awesome stories in here. What does he have? First, Thanos wins. Great story, and you get that old man Thanos. It is an awesome story. With the surprise spin-off, Cosmic Ghost Rider. True. So that's what I'm saying. I've always been a fan of Donny Cates, just doing like blockbuster type stuff. Then you had the Death of the Inhumans. This is his most disconnected work at Marvel. It really feels that it was an editorial mandate. Yo, he actually got a little bit mad at me when I asked him about that. When I had an interview with Donny Cates, and I think I brought up something about was Marvel using them to replace the X-Men, and he kind of snapped a little bit. Shout out to Donny Cates. Yeah, see, with the movie rights. So I brought that up, and he was like, hell nah. He was pretty mad about it. Wish Donny Cates the best, man. Huge fan. All right, finally, Silver Surfer Black. Come on, man. Really fun and trippy. Tradmore's artwork is the real star of that one. Right, that one almost is like a rare occasion where it's a Donny Cates book, but it's more of a Tradmore book. Yeah, but Donny Cates obviously did his thing on there as well. I feel like Why the Last Man seems to be underrated sometimes. I enjoyed it. We mentioned this in a recent video. That book's entertaining, while it might not be the best Omni, and I'm sure the physical book could stop a bullet. It has really good art by Pia Guerra, and for me, the book was a page turner, and the ending left me feeling heavy emotions. I felt like the ending was rushed, but I do feel you on that, man. It definitely was a good story. I don't think the show did it justice. American Vampire by Scott Snyder. It's a must-read and a great twist on the vampire genre in general. I know there's 2 volumes of that too, man. I have not read that one yet. Not sure if underrated or not, but I don't hear too much about how great Bendis' Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man is. Read it 3 times and definitely one of my top Omnis. What's up? Oh, Brandon, what's going on, brother? Yeah, I dug Ultimate Universe Spider-Man. It was basically Ultimate Spider-Man for a more modern time, which is what Bendis' regular Spider-Man was when it came out in the early 2000s. I agree with you on that. George Fisher, what's going on, man? Age of Apocalypse, I don't think people would say it's underrated. I think most people will recommend that book, man. If anyone thinks it's underrated, they're wildin'. Tyler Slavin says, Flash by Jeff Johns. I just like how he did with the Wally West character. Got you. Jonathan Amon says Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme Volume 1, Silver Age Surfer. That's another one for that. He's saying Strange by Ditko and Lee. I read that. I dug that one. And he's saying the Masterworks. Why? There's an Omni for it too. The Masterworks might go further on. Holds up much better than almost any other books I read from that era. I agree. I feel like you got Spider-Man, and then you have Strange. Holds up. And then I think, Fantastic Four, then you have Avengers. X-Men is probably somewhere above them, but yeah, I agree with you. And they're kind of quick reads, too. Tomb of Dracula, Morrison's Batman. It should be everyone's favorite Batman Omni. The Crossing, yeah, right. Or maybe he's serious. Maybe Sumio El Rey is saying Avengers The Crossing is the most underrated Omni. Max Klang saying, I gotta go with JSA by Jeff Johns Volume 2. It's when the run really started to pick up and it has arguably the best JSA stories such as Black Rain, Out of Time, JSA/JSA, Stealing Thunder, and many others. Also where the roster lineup were at its peak. Dope. Ghost Rider by Jason Aaron. I read that one. I don't think it's underrated because I feel like most people would agree we deserve more Ghost Rider Omnis, and that's literally the only one we have besides Cosmic Ghost Rider. We got some Star Wars canon, even though it doesn't have the Omnibus label on the book itself. It did when it was solicited, right? Oh, yeah, Marvel solicited. Yeah, exactly. All right, so he's going to say that's the most underrated. Orion, again, by Walter Simonson. She-Hulk by Peter David. Everybody always talks about She-Hulk by Dan Slott, which is also great, but Peter David's run is so funny and filled with good action and mystery. Good to know. Probably JMS's The Amazing Spider-Man, or at least Volume 1. This is one of my favorite Marvel Omnis. Sure, it has its horrid Sin's Past story. That isn't, actually the worst, but still god-awful. But this is some of the most character growth we see in 616 Peter ever. He's a teacher, finding MJ again, and the overall story arc hit for me. Probably in my top 10 Marvel Omnis. I did remember reading it. I enjoyed it. I think we all bash on the Sin's Past story, but it's a dope Spider-Man. I didn't sell it. I didn't want to get rid of it. We got one for Planet Hulk. I don't know, Isaac, if people would say it's underrated. I think most people would recommend Planet Hulk, but I agree. I do love the story. Black Cat, Dr. Aphra, Miss Marvel, and Batman 66. Joe Arnold, just to name a few. Norbit says Secret Wars 2. I think it's not very good. It's different from other stories. It's got its ups and downs like every other crossover. The title itself is misleading because what's happening in the story wasn't a secret at all. The title only indicates that it's a follow-up to it. All right, so we got one for that. I always heard terrible things about Secret Wars 2, and the Omnibus was always super intimidating. So much material collected in there. Okay, but yeah, so he's following up with that. You know, kind of that, I guess you need all those tie-ins. Wonder Woman by George Perez 1 through 3 is a bit wordy, and the returning villains are a bit repetitive, but the story and the art are awesome. I don't know, I feel like if people recommended Wonder Woman, I think the Perez volumes is what they would recommend, although maybe a lot of people would recommend Azzarello, as everyone's saying it's underrated. Deadly Hands of Kung Fu and the Shang-Chi books, The Mighty Thor by Jurgens Volume 2, X-Men Classic. It's confusing to see that the book is thick and only contains the bonus pages created years later. A lot of people don't know about what its contents are. Right, so that one is like a director's cut version of classic X-Men stories. And the last one, we got Christian saying Batman Superman Generations takes you through a retelling of the heroes into present day and into future, highly emotional story with huge moments, mostly ending in tragedy for hardcore fans only. Is this collected in the Batman Superman Omnis, those two big volumes? All right, man, a lot of great responses. Thank you to everybody who participated in the post. If you guys want to take part in these discussions, coming over to Facebook, the link's in the description. The group's called GemMintC. We just ask that you answer the 3-member questions so that we know you're a real person and that you're here to actually engage and not some type of scammer or bot or whatever. But man, thank you guys so much for watching. I have a couple of good ones I'm about to post in there too. So I'm not even going to spoil it right now. Go to the group. I'm going to pin it. So as soon as you get to the page, you'll see the question. And whatever the most recent question is going to be the next video. So you guys can kind of follow along. All right, too much. I'm out. Thanks for watching. Stay minty fresh. Peace.